So we've had quite a few questions about inner mastery and what that means and what do you get? And so the thing I want to say one thing about it and then we'll chat is it's very specific. Like we chose that name not just because it's trendy. We chose it because it means something. The inner side of it means something and the mastery means something.
So this is really curious to me because those are kind of words that we don't really use a lot. So when we talk about inner, what even does that mean? Like there's a heck of a lot of stuff going on these days, right? Like it's like we are completely, I don't know how we're even making it through day to day sometimes. Like I deal with clients and they're just so stressed and so hyper vigilant about what's happening and what's going on. And so I would often say, we tend to tune out instead of tune in. And I'm using that word intentionally because it is inner. And tuning into what? What is the inner? What are we looking into?
I love that. And I do think, like our outer world is in such chaos right now. And we don't have inner training. So checking out, like when we're done with our day, like plopping down in front of the boob tube and just like or scrolling through YouTube videos or doing anything to not have to feel that pain and overwhelm. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like we're just completely exhausted, right? Like the last thing I want to do, I talked about, people will just like get on Facebook and start scrolling and they'll read another kakapoopooness, another this, another that, another this. And it's like, and after an hour, you're exhausted. Or you go to work and people are talking about what's going on and there's nothing we can do about it. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like you're helpless. Or, I know where I live right now, there's a lot of protesters going on. I'm sure where you are too. And the other day I was driving by these protesters and there was just such hate and rhetoric going on that I was just like, it doesn't matter what you believe or what is important to you. That I think that's great. But to blast it out, like it just touched my heart so much that it actually made me cry. And so emotionally, and I know it's so easy just to say, okay, I'm just going to pick up the phone and I'm just going to scroll through mindless nothingness. It's like junk food for the mind, right? Or I'm just going to sit in front of the TV and I'm just going to flick channels and eat because I'm just exhausted. And so it's numbing out.
It's numbing out. We're needing to numb out, and the inner part that we're talking about is really it's empowering. And so I think a lot of people assume that the inner work, when you think of it, I know for myself, when I used to think of inner work, it was like the old psychology where you have to go in and find the demons and it's really heavy and you have to do all this slay the dragons and pull up all the like here's why like my mom did this to me when I was a kid and that's why I am the way that right that is a version of inner work. And that's I think where the mastery comes in. Why we've chosen these words is because there is another option. And it's through joy and inspiration. And there is inner work that you can do so that you're not numbed out and you do feel better.
And isn't that interesting? Because that's what happens. We end up with the nervous system. How do we deal with the outer world? What's going on? We either fight, there's your protests, or we run away and we hide and we go into just numbing out, or we completely freeze. Yeah, or we completely freeze and we don't know what to do. This is what I mean by our nervous system is completely hijacked. We don't know if we're coming or going. We don't know if we're up or down, or left or right. We have no idea. And there's a part of me that doesn't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but it's not going to get easier. It isn't. We are on a trajectory that is going to require more and more and more inner mastery. And this is the benefit. It's like, so it's not going to get easier. However, it can get more beautiful if you have a sanctuary inside yourself where you can go in and work with it so that you don't take it on. So any of my friends out there who are empaths, who are always talking about, I'm just taking it on. This is for empaths. Like, how do I deal with the world and not feel like I'm helpless and helpless?
And, when you say it's not going to get easier, I want to qualify that, because when you have tools, and that's what we're all about, is we're going to be working on tools in the inner mastery of how do you, because we can't change what's going on out there as easily as we can change what's going on in here. And when I change what's going on in here, it does actually make it easier. So it becomes easier for me, right?
Yeah. So when we say the change inwardly is like how we talk to ourselves or how we think, or the narrative that we are creating, our belief systems about the world and where it's going and what it's doing, and where we feel disempowered and how we can feel empowered. And what is it that it's ours to do, like mine and yours to do, and someone else's. Everyone has their own unique unfoldment. And this is what it is. It's an unfolding of, think of it like house cleaning. We get in there, or we do spring cleaning. We go in, we do spring cleaning, we clear out all the things that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit our life anymore, or that's broken or needs to be upgraded or whatever. We clear it out and we make space. That is no different than what we need to do internally with ourselves. And I think for most of us, we don't do that. And we don't, because we don't know how, or we have a belief system that it's going to take a long time, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be painful. That doesn't have to be true.
It doesn't. And I know, like, for a lot of people, it's like we said, we numb out or take a pill, we do something that, because the outer world, like what we've been taught is that everything we fix and everything from the outside in. And so these are the tools that'll allow you to, it's not about fixing. That's the first thing I want to say, is that we're taught with it, we're not okay. And, flare, little alert here, you're perfect the way that you are. And that doesn't mean that there's not also work to be done, right? So that's where we start from, is like, okay, if I don't have to fix myself and I can start from a place of I have value. I mean, that alone is a huge shift in story that we tell ourselves. Like, what a huge difference waking up in the morning thinking I have value just innately and I have nothing that I have to fix. Like, boom, and that makes everything lighter throughout my day. So when all this outer stuff comes at me, I take on less of it. And so it is a process. You had said that earlier, because it's not a one and done. So there is work that needs to be done. It just is very different from the normal work that we think of that feels like drudgery. This is exciting and beautiful work.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So, yeah. So here's something really interesting. Yeah. Here's something really interesting. When you're looking at the physical body, so say someone has physical pain. This is how I work with it. Someone has a physical ache or pain, and I'm going to use myself for this because I've had some pretty severe knee pain. I was a competitive gymnast when I was younger, and I ran track and field, and I love high adventure, high adrenaline sports. So my knees have had seen and done a lot. And so I could literally sit on that belief system and say, well, that's because I've abused my knees for the last 50 years. And that could be true. Except for this is how I know it's not. So my knees are so bad that I could hardly stand. I would be standing and I would turn and I would literally almost get a white light experience and go to the floor. I was sharp pain. I had x-rays done. My bones are bone on bone. There is nothing left between them. So I could be resigned and said, okay, I need to have surgery or I need to have X, Y, or Z. Except for here's what happened. I started to look inward and I said, okay, really, physical pain, physical stuff is only about 20%. If it was just physical, I could solve it physically. I could stretch it. I could have, use an anti-inflammatory. It would solve it. When I looked inside, this is the inner work. When I looked inside and I said, what are my needs? Those are my needs. What are my needs? I started to go, I don't know. Or I think I have my needs all met. I'm pretty good. And I said, okay, well, when is it hurting? When I'm standing. Well, what is it that I stand for? Well, I'm pretty clear about that. And then I heard, wait a minute, I keep catching myself saying, I can't stand this. I can't stand that. I can't stand what's going on over here. That I can't stand that this is going on. I kept hearing myself internally or even verbally saying that until I said, oh my gosh. So I made a list of all the things that I couldn't stand. And I allowed myself to feel it. So there's one level, feeling. Another, I voiced it. And then I looked at what is it that I need to become to be able to stand more beautifully for what is true and beautiful in my life. And then I went to bed. I did some journaling and did some work on it and did some breathing and wake up the next morning. Holy cow, my knees feel like great. I didn't do anything unless the good fairy of the healing fairy came to me in the middle of the night and did some magic woo-woo on me. Nothing changed. But it did internally. It completely changed. And this is what the inner mastery is about. It's changing, and it's not saying that your internal is right or wrong or good or bad. We're not saying that. It's just that there's a lot of stuff going on inside that probably is hurting or is making you feel heavy, weighted down. You can't sleep at night. What keeps you up at night? What's keeping you awake? What's eating you? All these different things that we are going to explore from a different level than just the physical. And let me guarantee you, it will change your outer physical manifestation. It will change you for the better. Seriously.
Yeah. It's the empowerment. Instead of, we've been trained to hand our autonomy, our authority over ourselves over to somebody else. Somebody else knows better than we do. And there are places where that's true. There are also a lot of places where that's not true. And it's feeling like more and more that the only reason that the advertising world continues that narrative is for money, is for greed. And so how can we take the inner path so that we are empowered, so that we can reset and reframe for ourselves and know? See, that's the thing is then we tap into our inner knowing of when we need to get help, because like you said, we're not meant to do it alone. That doesn't mean that we just hand our authority over to somebody else and say, you fix me. Right? There's so much gray area between those two. And yet we tend to swing with like, well, you're just going to do it yourself. Okay. Or, somebody else is going to take care of all of it for me. What if there's this middle ground? And that's what we're working with of, yes, we can work at it from the exterior and get people in the medical profession to help us and to support us, while we're also working on it on the inside so that in your instance, when you were talking about the people that you used to call, like if they had the inner practices and had maintained that and had something that they could do on a regular basis, that's the mastery part. Because when you master something, it's yours, you own it. So your ownership of your own health, like that's something we don't talk about in the Western medicine world of what does it look like to own my own health so that when I get, yeah.
I think we need to go into the freezing. Maybe that's why it's freezing so much. like to talk about like we feel frozen. We don't know what to do. We feel helpless. And when we feel like so what happens? So we know what happens when we are stressed. We fight ourselves, fight each other, fight for something, fight against, like we fight, and that's an inflammation cycle. The resignation part of it is like, why bother? We give up and we just completely numb out and go away. That's also a coping mechanism that over time does not really serve anyone. And that could be like drinking, eating too much, shopping too much, just not being here fully live. But the big one that most of us don't talk about is the frozen. Is like when we actually freeze, we don't know what to do. And why it's so important right now is that we do need to stand up. We do need to speak out. But what are we connected to inside? Is it from fear and doubt and worry and shame? Or is it from a place of co-creating with love and possibility and joy and inspiration that has so much more lightness to being? Like, it's so much more beautiful to come from that place. And that requires a flick of the switch internally from our brains. And it takes practice. It's not a one and done. It's going to take practice, and we're not actually meant to do it alone. We need each other to help each other, to stand with each other, to support each other.
Yeah. So we're going into the fun, deep, dark places where it's like, you know what? It's not so bad. It's actually where all of our power lives. And like the root, like you said, the roots of the tree are what basically support the entire tree. And so we get to, our inner mastery is going in and playing with our roots. And how do we get more nutrients? How do we, the thing about a tree is the environment in which it's in determines the health of the tree. So a tree that's in a beautiful environment with lots of other, trees around it that help it support it. And they've found that this is true, that trees in monocultures, like when they plant all pine forests, they're not as healthy as when they're in ecosystems that are diverse. And there's all these different things around. So nature does that. And it creates an environment for a thriving tree. What does that mean for us? That means we go in and we look at what's the inner environment so that we can thrive. And I'm so tired of this whole survival thing that we like just trying to hang on by our fingernails and survive, when we have the ability to literally thrive. And it is each of our birthrights, and it's inside of us. And the medical institutions don't want us to do that because then we're taking money out of their pockets. Well, let's do that. Let's take money out of their pockets and keep it in ours, right? And thrive in the process. Like, it's such a win-win-win for us.
Mm-hmm. So, exactly. So years ago, I worked at a chronic pain clinic in Arizona, and people would literally invest so much money in themselves to get better. Like I'm talking like serious injuries, serious illnesses that people would come, and they would literally have anywhere from 2 to 4 sessions a day for sometimes longer than a week, sometimes all the way up to a month. So they would be literally cashing in a lot of their savings plans. And we would have miracles, literally miracles that would happen in those months. Absolutely. It was well worth it. Let me tell you, if you could heal from something, and wow, yeah, you'd invest in it. But my role was, after a month or so, I would give them a call and I'd say, hey, how you doing? I know you were here. You had some pretty amazing miracles that happened. How are you doing now? And almost always they would say, Steph, it came back. I'm in that painful place again. I'm like, and this was like years ago for me. And I'm like, something's missing. We're changing the physical, and a lot of times too, people would have an emotional release. They would have a mental shift, but they weren't able to sustain it. They needed, and of course, the company I was working for would say, well, sign them up to another month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they've already cashed in all their savings. There's got to be a more kinder, more beautiful way to be able to do this so that it's not so dependent on always returning and paying all kinds of money and taking a long time. I'm like, there's got to be something. And this is where inner mastery was born from, is like, this is my years of 30 years as a therapist of saying there is something more going on. How about we give the tools to individuals so that they've got the tools that they can go away and they can apply them wherever they go, wherever they live, wherever they're traveling to. They've got it with them inside, always. Because that's what's going to make the difference.
I like the way you said that. So it's not even so much about taking the money out of the pockets of, big business, because in the United States, that's what the medical field is. It truly is about also our medical system is way overburdened, and I know that yours is too. And so making space for the people who really need it, because that those are the ones who, it's like, if I can take care of, like, your knee story from earlier, if I can take care of myself in the little ways, and then it starts to amp up and it's in the bigger ways, and I can start to heal some things and support other people, and now I am not adding to the burden, I'm actually adding to the health of myself, of the planet, of my small community, whatever it is. They say, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And this is one way for us to be a part of the solution and that's the thing, is if each of us in a small way is a part of the solution gets to be much easier for everybody. And then we feel, yeah. Well, not only that, but we feel, like, I think a lot of the reason that we're feeling frustrated right now is it does feel like, what can I do? I can't do anything to change this. You know what? You can. And it's called inner mastery.
Well, of course we don't talk about it because it's big business, the health industry. It's big business. And health is not just a one and done. It's an ongoing unfolding. And it's like, think of roots of a tree. There's multiple roots of health. We're not just talking about physical health. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about emotional health, spiritual health, financial health, relationship health. Oh my gosh, like you could split health into so many different roots. And that's what we want to do so that we can go deeper into the like what we don't see. That's actually what creates the outer.
I love that. And I do think, like, our outer world is in such chaos right now, and we don't have inner training. So checking out, like, when we're done with our day, like plopping down in front of the boob tube and just like, or scrolling through YouTube videos, or doing anything to not have to feel that pain and overwhelm. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of overburdening, I mean, this is really interesting because we're talking from two different countries here right now. Maren's in the United States. I'm in Canada. We have a very different systems in the medical. And I think we're meant to actually transform it. Both sides, both countries. We're looking at a very different way. And the only way we're going to do that is to begin with ourselves and ourselves. Ourselves, that it's the key of like, there's so many other ways to look at it. And again, it's not about a right or wrong or good or bad or any of those things. It's about allowing ourselves the choice and the freedom of our own birthright, our own magical, mystical way of unfolding in this world, that we are treasures, just waiting to be seen.
It's numbing out. We're needing to numb out, and the inner part that we're talking about is really, it's empowering. And so I think a lot of people assume that the inner work, when you think of it, I know for myself, when I used to think of inner work, it was like the old psychology where you have to go in and find the demons and it's really heavy and you have to do all this slay the dragons and pull up all the like, here's why, like my mom did this to me when I was a kid, and that's why I am the way that, right? That is a version of inner work. And that's, I think, where the mastery comes in. Why we've chosen these words is because there is another option. And it's through joy and inspiration. And there is inner work that you can do so that you're not numbed out and you do feel better.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the resignation. And, when you say it's not going to get easier, I wanna qualify that because when you have tools, and that's what we're all about, is we're gonna be working on tools in the inner mastery of how do you, because we can't change what's going on out there as easily as we can change what's going on in here. And when I change what's going on in here, it does actually make it easier. So it becomes easier for me, right? And I know, like, for a lot of people, it's like we said, we numb out or take a pill, we do something that, because the outer world, like, what we've been taught is that everything we fix and everything from the outside in. And so these are the tools that'll allow you to, it's not about fixing. That's the first thing I want to say, is that we're taught with we're not okay. And, flare, little alert here, you're perfect the way that you are. And that doesn't mean that there's not also work to be done, right? So that's where we start from, is like, okay, if I don't have to fix myself and I can start from a place of I have value. I mean, that alone is a huge shift in story that we tell ourselves. Like, what a huge difference waking up in the morning thinking I have value just innately and I have nothing that I have to fix. Like, boom, you know? And that makes everything lighter throughout my day. So when all this outer stuff comes at me, I take on less of it. And so it is a process. You had said that earlier, because it's not a one and done. So there is work that needs to be done. It just is very different from the normal work that we think of that feels like drudgery. This is exciting and beautiful work.